Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
The following program is sponsored by Max Out Savings Advisors. The views expressed during the broadcast are solely for entertainment purposes and do not necessarily express the views of KNTH, its management, Max Out Savings Advisors, or its sponsors. Max Out Savings Advisors and members of the Max Out Savings team may or may not hold securities mentioned during the show. Plan for your prosperity. Prepare for your retirement. Safeguard your savings. And nurture your investments. This is the Max Out Savings Show with Ted Gioka, a presentation of Max Out Savings Advisors. Now, here's your host from Max Out Savings Advisors, Ted Gioka.
Good morning. Welcome to the Max Out Savings Show. I'm Ted Gioka, and we're talking savings, investments, in your retirement here on the show. Our show is all about building up wealth and understanding the world today. Our motto and philosophy is to save aggressively and invest conservatively. That's the key to building up wealth over the long term. Save aggressively and invest conservatively. You always want to start out with your 401k, your different type of programs. Put away minimum of 10% plus a company match. This is how you build up wealth. This is how you change your life, and this is how you have a successful retirement. And so take charge of your retirement today and build up that wealth. We got a lot to talk about on the show today. As usual, it's a very volatile week in the markets. Things are always changing. It's just I've said numerous times, it's really been remarkable on how rapidly things are changing in the world. And was it Lenin or someone said things don't change for decades, and then they change in days. And we're in one of those times. The Trump administration is moving rapidly to consolidate power and to change. They really don't have a choice. We want to lay out a little bit of a case, what's happening, where we think things are going, and how to protect your retirement in here on the show today. And so the important thing to understand is they're moving rapidly. They don't have a choice. If you look at the debt, we have over $36 trillion worth of debt. Like we're going to have $40 trillion at the end of the year, and we're spending $1 trillion. At least we were when President Trump came into office. We were spending money at the rate of $1 trillion every 100 days. Now, one thing to understand about $1 trillion, most people don't really understand what a $1 trillion is. It's very difficult to understand. It's such a large number, and it's just it's not like a billion. A billion's 1,000. 1,000 million. People can kind of understand, but you're talking about 1,000 billion, and people really have trouble understanding that. Let me see something here. Bear with me just a second. I'm going to check something out here, too. I meant to get this earlier. Okay, so I want to see out, we'll have to skip that. We can't get the information now. Let's see here. It's interesting. I was just going to use Grok to find out how long it takes to count to $1 trillion, but this is a live show, and they're very busy this morning. But this shows you a couple things, how quickly Grok is going. But what I want you to understand is if you were to spend the money, the numbers are just astronomical just to count to $1 trillion, and so people can't even understand these numbers. So they're about $1 trillion every 100 days, but but it's worse than that because it's also about 6.5% deficit GDP every year. So if you think about it, if you were to just take your salary and then spend 6.5% more every year, you'd have a pretty good. Your lifestyle would go up dramatically, but eventually you get hit with the debt and you got to pay off the bill. And at that point in time, it becomes very difficult it becomes very difficult to pay it off, and then you cut back, and then your standard of living goes down. But it's worse than that. Is if you're spending 6.5% a year every year more than you make, and your debt goes up, at some point the credit card company cuts off your credit or raises the interest rate on you, and then instead of paying maybe 15% or 14% or 13%, you're paying 25%, and then all of a sudden you can't afford your credit card bills, and you have to default, and you go into bankruptcy. And that's what the United States is facing. Make no mistake about it. 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, 5 years we've spent. It's been 1 year. I think it was a little under 6.5%. A couple, in 2020 it was closer to 12. It's been obscene amounts of money being spent by the government. The Biden administration, it reached a point where spending was completely out of control, and people were basically. But in the last months of the Biden administration, basically they were just in there looting the government. They were just giving out grants to their friends, billion here, billion there. It was corruption on a level not seen. I really don't. I've said I think you got to really get Roman times to see the looting of the treasury that happened in the last 3 to 6 months of the Biden administration. So President Trump has got to move very quickly. He's got to make big changes because this thing keeps spiraling out of control. Look, the Europeans don't want to lend to us now. They're all upset with us because we want peace in the Ukraine war. We're not nuking Russia. The Japanese are selling our bonds. The Chinese are selling our bonds. The Saudis have been selling our bonds. So the only people left to buy the bonds is going to be the Federal Reserve, which is monetizing the debt. And at some point, people lose confidence, and then all of a sudden interest rates spike up, and you end up in a hyperinflation. And so we have a very unstable financial system globally, actually. And so President Trump has got to move very quickly. He's moving extraordinarily fast. I was just watching some of the Bret Baier report with Elon Musk, and if you look at his cabinet, I don't know, there's like 20 cabinet members. The people that he has on his Doge Commission are intellectually on the level, and some of these people have done more than a lot of the cabinet members. We've never seen an administration with this type of firepower. I mean, you go back to for decades they talked about John F. Kennedy's whiz kids and the people he put in place in power. At the time, and you got to go back to FDR. These people made big changes. Kennedy didn't really get a chance to make as big a change as what FDR did, and he put in massive changes in the system. And Donald Trump is doing the same thing, because if he doesn't cut the spending, if they don't get $1 trillion of savings in, they're going to be in trouble. And in addition, he's putting the tariffs in. And then we got April 2nd coming up. We got a big program with the tariffs. Well, Trump believes very strongly in two things. We need to, and this is important to understand. He believes we should have manufacturing in the United States of America and to provide jobs for American workers. Remember the strategy was, well, originally, what we're going to do is we're going to let the manufacturing go overseas. It's dirty. No one wants to do it. It's all going to be service jobs in the United States and technology jobs and things like that. And so it's just going to be a service economy. Well, now we've got AI coming at us like a freight train. And honestly, the easiest jobs in the world for AI to take are the service jobs, and so, but AI can't build. They can't build a fighter plane. They can't build an automobile. I mean, you can put robots in there, but they got to be serviced. You have people, workers. You got welders. You got all types of people. Those are good jobs, and so we need them back here. And also, he believes that the tariffs can provide income, because what did we just say? 6.5% deficits in government spending. Well, he's cutting spending to try to get some money, but he'd like to get tax cuts to the middle class that's suffering. That's the two things that have been suffering horribly under inflation, the loss of jobs to foreigners, and they're also Trump's most loyal, protected base of him and the MAGA movement. And so, one of the lessons that that Trump learned is look, you can know all the billionaires in the world, but they're not going to help you when the government goes after you and wants to arrest you and indict you and hires Judge Merchan to sit there and put on a dog and pony show to try to make him a felon and it's like and so we have to completely reorder the United States. And so they're moving quickly. Things are happening. We got the tariffs coming up. And so this is exciting. We're finally starting to get government spending under control. And it's just, it's kind of one thing after another of every day they come back with one more shocking statistic that the government is doing that's just crazy, that's just recklessly spending money. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday evening, and he was in the Navy, and he said, the ship docked one day, and they had to pick up a part for one of the helicopters. This was wild. This just maybe a decade or two back, but it was like a $10,000 part, but it was the wrong part. They just threw it over the side of the ship. It was like he said the waste in government is absolutely out of control. The interesting thing, a lot of the people he's putting in the Grok program, these are experienced businessmen in there. They when you run a business, you got to watch your money pretty closely, and you've got to you want to try to eliminate as much waste and inefficiency as possible. And you got a very honed and tuned way to you've got to have that ability to do that. Otherwise, because your business will fail. And so we're working to cut the spending. Now, the spending cuts in Grok can be used to tax cuts for the working class and to get the economy going. Because the other thing is what we said is, look, it's going to be real hard we can't cut enough to get this deficit. We have to also grow the economy. So they're going to push to grow the economy. So right now, the economy is slowing down some, but the theory being is, look, once we put these tariffs out there, we know we're going to try to collect about $200 billion from that. We hopefully can save $1 trillion here and there, maybe not all in 1 year. That's going to give us some money to give to the middle class to get the economy going because we're cutting government spending. That's going to slow the economy. There's two types of government spending right now. We have a drop off in the spending after the election. Every president going into a presidential election wants to have the last 6 months of the year of the election. They want to have a whole bunch of federal spending in place so the economy looks good. They get reelected. That goes away. And the other thing is, if you're cutting the spending, firing workers, you've got to have some growth elsewhere. And so this is where we are. So the market isn't doing well. It's down 5%. And now if you're in the right things, you might be up this year. It's a good chance you're up this year. But if you're not, if you're in the S&P 500, and it's not going well. The S&P 500 is expensive, and it's had a big run for 2 years on the back of just relentless government spending. Now, here's the interesting thing. Tell you what, we're coming up here in a break. I want to cover this after. But what you understand is we're making big changes. Things are happening. That creates a lot of uncertainty. This uncertainty is feeding into the market now. The market's selling off ahead of it, and frankly, it looks to go lower. I don't really see a lot of support. It's kind of, the last line of defense was sort of the 50-week moving average, and really, you're probably going to have to go down to the 5,400s, 5,200 area, to kind of stabilize this thing. So we'll sort of have to see what happens there. But why is that? And we're going to discuss that after the quick break. And again, where can you go in a market like this? And we're going to discuss some of that. And because these are big changes. I mean, in the last 3 months, 3 or 4, we've seen the biggest changes in the financial system, in the markets. Gold's hit $3,100. These are big changes. This is all happening at lightning speed, and where we go from here. And I want you to understand it right after this break right here on the Max Out Savings Show.
The Max Out Savings Show with Ted Gioka is taking your calls now at 713-339-1070. Ted Gioka will return after these messages.
Hey, everybody, Charlie Kirk here. Ted Gioka, the founder of Max Out Savings Advisors, always says, save aggressively and invest conservatively. He specializes in helping people grow their retirement account with as little risks as possible. Ted combines working knowledge with the intuition gained from over 25 years of experience of value investing in the stock and bond markets for retirement accounts. Like you, Ted is deeply conservative in life and in his investment approach. His risk strategy allows him to anticipate market downswings to protect your money. Ted is also the conservative host of the Max Out Savings Show. You can listen to him every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. right here on The Answer. If the idea of saving aggressively and investing conservatively appeals to you, the best way to get to know Ted is to call him. The number is 713-627-0400 or visit maxoutsavings.com. That is maxoutsavings.com. Call Ted right now, 713-627-0400, or visit maxoutsavings.com.
Hi, I'm Sam Malone, the owner of Houston's cutting-edge media company called 512 New Media. At 512 New Media, we create amazing videos that companies use on their websites, telling their story in bold colors with exciting animation and graphics. At 512 New Media, we also shoot television commercials and instructional videos. And if you want to show off your business from the air, we're ready to go with our drone video aircraft. Let us help you create your media message. We're online at 512newmedia.com or call 281-822-8803. 512 New Media is Houston's only media creation and distribution company that's actually owned by someone who's currently on the air. And that gives us an incredible edge when creating content for consumers to use on their laptops, tablets, and smartphones. Standing by to create your message, we're 512 New Media, 512newmedia.com.
This is Ted Gioka, host of the Max Out Savings Show, one of Houston's most popular financial radio shows, celebrating over a decade on the air in Houston, Texas. With stocks at record high valuations and interest rates near record lows, you need to have your guard up. You need to have a plan to manage risk to your retirement. Do you? At Max Out Savings Advisors, we have a risk-based value investing approach to your retirement. If you would like some help managing your retirement, go to maxoutsavings.com to set up an appointment. That's maxoutsavings.com.
Once again, here's your host for the Max Out Savings Show, Ted Gioka.
Welcome back to the Max Out Savings Show. So we're just talking about big changes in the market, big changes, hyper fast move by President Trump. We got the tariffs coming up next week. President Trump believes in tariffs. He believes they're going to help out growth, bring the factories back to the United States, and he also believes that we can get tax revenue from it. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this happens next week. I think some countries are going to do pretty well pretty quickly. Other ones are going to be take some time. Europe and Canada and China seem to be the toughest ones. Europe. Europe is just, as I said earlier in the show, unless we do, Moscow, they're not going to be happy. They want to take out Vladimir Putin, and Trump and the American people are sick of paying for this, and we just want to see peace. And we've lost a million human beings, and the Europeans are just like, no, we need to get rid of Trump. Need to get rid of Putin. I think we need to get rid of Trump next, but. And so there's real issues there. They're talking about breaking off from the U.S., forming their own NATO, which is fine with me. But there's kind of a breakup. Baroni in Italy says, "Look, we value the United States." I think you could even see them. I think give some more favorable treatment to some countries in Europe than others. We'll have to see on that. If you go to Europe, there's virtually no American cars on the road, and yet Europe wants free access to automobiles here. We've got a substantial trade deficits with the Europeans, and it's just, this is something that we're just going to have to kind of deal with in here. It's a little frustrating overall. But I think that's the first one. If you look at it, the EU, we have about a $235 billion trade deficit with the EU, and so it's kind of been a one-way street. Uh, the China is going to be, China's 300 billion, which is, not a lot more than the Europeans. And I think the Chinese know they need to do something, whereas the Europeans think they've done nothing wrong. It's just that they're talking to the drug companies and they're going to tear off the drugs. What's remarkable about the drug sector is we tend to pay anywhere from 3 to 10 times more for drugs in the United States as they do overseas, because the people overseas, they're not stupid. They're like, hey, we're not paying those ridiculous prices, and so the drug companies cut it. In the United States, they got all this lobbying and all the TV advertising, so the media all supports the drug companies, and we get stuck paying for it. Well, okay, but you would at least think that the drugs would be made in the United States of America. But they're all being made over. A lot of them are in China. They're being made. A lot of the precursors are in China. A lot of the drugs are being made in Europe and particularly Ireland for tax purposes. I mean, it's just it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I wouldn't let a drug in this company without a 50%. I mean, I would put a big time tariff on any drug coming into this country. It's ridiculous. It's just that these companies are basically producing their drugs where they get the best tax things. Well, fine, you're not getting any tax breaks from us if you bring it into the country, and so the drug companies are going to be under pressure there. So I think this is going to be somewhat contentious. The other one, Mexico is cooperating. Mexico's got about 175 billion, and if you tap that onto the it's tens of billions of dollars they've been making on the cartels from drug dealing and particularly immigrants that they flooded the country with, and then you add on the billions and tens of billions of dollars worth but remittances back to Mexico by Mexicans, to help support the family. Mexico, they're cooperating. I think there's going to have to be some pretty tough things. They're going to have to make some changes on Mexico, but Mexico at least understands and they want to work with us. So I think we're going to see some things there. Canada's kind of it's kind of the new hub. Mark Carney of the globalists, the Davos crowd. They're going to use Canada as a wedge to try to incite the Americans and try to attack Trump. It's kind of there's really a global push to attack Trump by the globalists, the Davos crowd. They want to stick it to Trump. If they get control of Canada, really they become the globalists aren't our friends. I mean, just one thing about the Chinese and the Russians. The Chinese and the Russians, look, they're kind of like, we don't care what you Americans do. We're going to rule the world. Or the Chinese, we're the masters of the world. We're the brightest people. We have 3,000 years of history. They believe this stuff, but they sort of stay in their thing, and they want to produce a bunch of stuff to sell everybody. And whatever you want, they'll sell it to you, and they really don't care. The globalists, these European globalists and the Davos crowd, they're like, no, wait a minute. You can't have cows. You need to get rid of those. You're going to have electric cars. And by the way, you people have too many. We'd like to see at least your population reduced by half. You're kind of like, it's really remarkable. I mean, 10, 20 years ago, if I would say that, you would think you're a complete lunatic, but this is what they believe. And so we can't have people on the north of us trying to we can't let them get you cannot let the globals get a toehold in the Western Hemisphere. And so this thing with Canada, I've been saying, I think is a bigger deal than people think. Carney, keep in mind, he was the head of the Central Bank of England. They kind of put their man, their Davos man in Canada, and he's going to try to stir things up. So I think that's going to be a much, much more contentious trade issue. But these trade issues, as I said, he's going to have a deal coming out April 2nd. Well, they're going to put in place the things. Some of them they're going to say, hey, we're going to cut the cars from from 25 to 10%. They're going to make some changes. Some of them, we're going to keep it there, but we're still negotiating. It's going to be kind of a drawn-out process. But this is, again, it's not good for corporate America. There's a lot of things. Look, the stock market is not well positioned right now. We've had 2 great years in the stock market. The PE ratios are sky high levels. The CAPE ratios, which is a longer term PE, I think it was 35, 37. It's just one number after another is at the 98, 96, 99 percentile over the last 120 years or so of valuations. The European stocks were just grossly undervalued, and they've had a huge rally in the last 3 or 4 months as people move out of the U.S. into Europe. But it's very expensive, and so the big thing now is AI is going to come and boost everybody's profits. Well, maybe it is, but there's other things that are coming up against it. As we said, these tariffs. We just talked about the drug companies. Look, these guys are going to be under pressure to move their factories back here to the United States. That costs money. The auto companies, move your factories back here. The machinery, everybody, Apple's putting factories back here. I mean, NVIDIA. I think NVIDIA is they're going to look at that. All these companies, they're falling all over themselves to put factories back here in the U.S. And, maybe if they put enough factories back here, we'll kind of forget, we'll wave them off the tariff list, but we're going to get the factories back here one way or another. And so that's not good for profits. If Apple's got to spend $500 billion moving plants out of China, that's not good for their profits. And one of the things they're looking to do is they'd like to put something called an equipment a tax credit for equipment, so you can or accelerated write-off. So if you put the factory in and it costs you, let's say it costs you $100 million worth of new plant and equipment you put in, well, rather than depreciating that over a 10-year time frame, you can take the whole thing this year. Well, that's a positive there because then you're not paying any taxes, but it kind of this gets into some esoteric accounting, but it kind of slows down you can make some adjustments, but it still slows down your earnings growth because it changes your taxes, it changes your depreciation schedules to some extent, and it also and I'm not an accountant, I'm an engineer, but it also costs you the money. So all these guys are having to spend more money. Inflation is going up, and at the same time, President Trump's on the phone. He talked to the auto people this week. It's like, look, guys, we're putting these tariffs 25%. This doesn't mean you can raise the price of your cars, 15% over here to take advantage of what's happened to via Volkswagen and Audi. We want you guys to hold the line on the thing. They're watching all these companies closely, so the companies are going to be under additional pressure to keep their prices down. There's a lot of pressure out there to cut back on the inflation, and they're looking at it. One of the most remarkable things about this big inflation surge we've had since 2020, which is very unusual, is that typically in an inflationary period, companies' margins go down because they get squeezed on costs. So, they're selling the automobile for $40,000, and their parts are maybe $20,000, but then they go up to $21,000, and maybe $22,000 because inflation went up to, well, maybe they raise the price to $41,000 and eat a little bit, and their margins shrink. But the corporate America nowadays is typically run by CFOs, by financial people. Even the CEOs are financial people, so they're like, hey, we need profits, keep raising the price up, and so. But Trump is watching that now. The government's watching them closely, and so they're going to be under pressure. And so the margins are going to start shrinking. The margins actually went up. They've gone up over the last 5 years for corporate America because the corporations have been so aggressive at raising prices. And really, in some cases, actually more than some, a lot of cases, they've been raising prices more than the products. The inflation has gone in, and so this is going to pressure the stocks in here. This is why the concern is out there. This is why the market's selling off. And another issue that we're looking at is there's an interesting story by Simon White out of Bloomberg. And Simon does some really fantastic stuff. And one of them is the stocks will encounter further resistance as the impulse of U.S. fiscal deficit fades and Treasury issuance rapidly slows. Because remember, we're saying we're borrowing $1 trillion. We're borrowing an additional $1 trillion every 100 days. Well, that's flooding the system with Treasuries. And what he says is a couple things: that spending increases the economy, the money goes into the stock market. But the other thing they're finding in the studies is that $1 trillion worth of treasuries can be, there's something called rehypothecation, which is a very important word in the financial system that no one really understands. But I think at any type of crisis, if we have a major financial crisis, it'll be the linchpin of the whole thing, which means that I can take my treasuries, I can lend them to someone else for, to give me some money on it. I repo them out somewhere else and lend them out, and then those people they'll like take it and they'll borrow off of that. And it becomes kind of a daisy chain. And what happens is they find the repo is now more money-like, meaning treasuries can no longer have low velocity, but can be rehypothecated through the system, creating new liquidity as they go. And so, as the treasury issuance has gone down tremendously, he's got some charts up there of as issuance goes down, the liquidity goes down and the market goes down. And he's got some pretty interesting things. If you look at the U.S. manufacturing ISM, it follows it pretty closely. In global financial indicators, that's been dropped off as well. But the key is this really the U.S. bond issuance versus the S&P 500 is a remarkable chart that has really been kind of mirroring the S&P 500. So as they issue more Treasury bonds, the market goes up. As they kind of pull back, the market goes down. And right now, there's been a huge drop in issuance of Treasury bonds, and the market has not gone down very much. So all of this adds up to a market that's likely to sit there and be very, very choppy this year. Got a good chance of going lower, and we have a lot of volatility. Look, later this year, I think they're going to get I think they're going to get the deficit's going to go down. I think inflation's going to be going down. The economy might slow some, but then you're going to get a tax bill put in place where Donald Trump, they're trying to get so people under $150,000 pay no tax, no income tax at all, which is exciting. And that's going to be very bullish for the economy. It's going to grow the economy. But right now, we're in this cycle of cutting government spending, a drop in fiscal spending from the election coming in. We have tariffs coming out, creating uncertainty, and all of this stuff is adding up to it slowing the economy down. And another interesting, really fascinating thing out there is that the Mission Consumer Confidence level dropped to 57 from 64. It's been dropping quite a bit. There's a fascinating study. They actually looked at spending of sale of stocks, but they looked they compared the sale of stocks based on what state they were in, and then they looked at it after the presidential elections. In whatever state where there was, as example, in Texas, Texas or Florida. When Biden won, there was a bunch of selling of stocks, and the Republicans got all pessimistic. And when Trump won this time, particularly the first time, there was a huge amount of selling out of New York, Massachusetts, California as people. And so you got to watch some of these consumer confidence numbers because they're really being driven more by political thinking, which is really fascinating. But the economy is definitely slowing. The Atlanta GDP now, which is one of the better ones out there, is saying negative 2.8 for this quarter. That's being skewed by gold importations because there's so much demand for gold. There's pouring into the United States. It's skewed the numbers. I think you're looking at probably maybe 0.5% for the first quarter, 0.75%, and I think it could slow a little in the second as well as all this kind of. There's so much uncertainty out there kind of works its way through the system. But later this year, that if Trump can turn this aircraft carrier around, the United States is going to be the premier place in the world, and we're ahead of everyone else. And that's going to be fantastic, and this is going to open up some phenomenal opportunities. Tell what, let's take this quick break, and we'll be right back right here on the Max Out Savings Show.
If you've got savings and investment questions, Ted Gioka has answers. Call the Max Out Savings Show now at 713-339-1070. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Ted Gioka of the Max Out Savings Show. Our motto and philosophy is to save aggressively and invest conservatively. The world is changing at a faster rate than any time in the last 50 years. The investment world has changed. Have you changed? Inflation will destroy your retirement. It is a different world that requires different strategies and ideas. The era of indexing and investing is over. If you need help, listen to the Max Out Savings Show. Our show airs every Saturday at 10 a.m. and Sunday at 7 a.m. We talk about investments, the world, and where the world is going today, and help you understand it and help you save money and build up wealth. It's the Max Out Savings Show. And if you need some help, go to our website, maxoutsavings.com. That's maxoutsavings.com. On the website, you can sign up for the free Max Out Savings Report. Our report covers all types of these big issues, the changes in the world, and helps you understand and protect your retirement. So go to the website, maxoutsavings.com.
Hey everybody, Charlie Kirk here. Ted Gioka, the founder of Max Out Savings Advisors, always says, save aggressively and invest conservatively. He specializes in helping people grow their retirement account with as little risks as possible. Ted combines working knowledge with the intuition gained from over 25 years of experience of value investing in the stock and bond markets for retirement accounts. Like you, Ted is deeply conservative in life and in his investment approach. His risk strategy allows him to anticipate market downswings to protect your money. Ted is also the conservative host of the Max Out Savings Show. You can listen to him every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. right here on The Answer. If the idea of saving aggressively and investing conservatively appeals to you, the best way to get to know Ted is to call him. The number is 713-627-0400 or visit maxoutsavings.com. That is maxoutsavings.com. Call Ted right now, 713-627-0400 or visit maxoutsavings.com.
In the 1970s, the big song was the Bee Gees' Staying Alive. Well, it was difficult back then to stay alive if you were a retiree. Inflation was running rampant, and since then, over the last 25 years, it's gone away. Well, inflation's coming back, and it's going to endanger your retirement. If you're a retiree, inflation is your biggest enemy. Hi, this is Ted Gioka of the Max Out Savings Show. If you need help with your retirement, I'd like to help you out. Go to maxoutsavings.com. That's maxoutsavings.com, and we'll show you how you manage through inflation. Don't let inflation destroy your retirement.
We return now to the Max Out Savings Show. Here's Ted Gioka.
Welcome back to the Max Out Savings Show. I'm Ted Gioka. I want to mention one of our sponsors, which is Rangoni Alto Gin, which is a fine botanical gin from the Italian Alps. It is put together, one of the oldest distilleries up there. They've been doing business for quite a while. Some of the recipe books they were using are just hundreds and hundreds of years old, and they put together a phenomenal botanical gin. It's got a fantastic taste. It's all organic botanicals. The water's great. It's just they use wheat for the alcohol. It's just a phenomenally good drink. It's in some of the finest restaurants in the city. If you get a chance, try it out. It's Rangoni Alto Gin. Look for the bird on the label. It's a kingfisher bird on the label. You can find it at places like Specs. Now, I mentioned the U.S. government is borrowing an additional $1 trillion every 105 days. This is before Trump came in. It slowed down some now, but I finally got the number. I remembered this number, but I'm like, well, that can't be right. Okay, so I had to check it out again. But if you wanted to count to $1 trillion, okay, why don't y'all start counting to $1 trillion? And how long do you think it'll take you to get to $1 trillion? You start right now. Okay, and let's just assume you're counting one, like 1001, 1002, 1003. It will take you 31,710 years to count to $1 trillion, which is okay. Yet somehow we're blowing through $1 trillion. But we're borrowing an additional $1 trillion every 100 days. This just goes to show you how out of control things have got, and so this is why gold is sitting at it peaked out at $3,114. I mean, is there any surprise here? With this type of spending out there, and it's just this is gold is up. Gold's up about 17. Gold's up about 15.5%. Silver's up almost 17.9%. It's just copper's up 26%. People around the world. We talked about in the show as soon as the Russia war started. It's one thing about the Max Out Savings Show is we're going to deliver. We're going to try to. The show kind of wanders a little bit around, but when things happen, we're going to try to bring them to you. We're going to try to let you understand. We're going to try to beat everybody out there giving you what we think is going to happen. We're going to try to give you what we really think is happening, not what you're hearing on mainstream dealers. You said, look, this is going to be inflationary. We laid out the case. We in our free Max Out Savings report, which we send out, by the way, and all these other people are charging for this. We send it out for free. We laid out the percentages of grains, of metals, of fertilizers coming out of the Ukraine and Russia, and what this would do with these embargoes. And then we sat there and said, look, then they decided to freeze. They had like $300 billion at the Federal Reserve Bank. They froze it. I said, this is a disaster for the financial system. People have to depend on, no matter what happens, that if their money is in dollars, it's protected, because otherwise people are going to go talk to China. They're going to get Chinese yuan. They're going to buy gold and other things. And that's kind of what's happened. Now you got the Europeans want to take all of the Russians' money and make it over for reparations. Hey, maybe that's the right thing. But the problem is the Europeans don't control the financial system of the United States. So we're the one that takes the hit on it. This is why, the Europeans are real quick to spend our money on everything, or our prestige, or our U.S. dollar, our dominance in the world, to try to help themselves. But what we pointed out here is look, you can't go around confiscating people's money, because then they won't ever trust you. You take somebody's money, they will never forget. Anyone's like that. And in a financial system, we want to be the guys that people can count on. Hey, we might be mad at them, we're not happy with them, but we don't take their money, and they'll always keep their money with us, and everyone will keep their money with us, and then we'll have the dominant. The global currency, and we're going to profit from that long term. And so this is something to watch. Gold, is going up. I mean, we've been telling y'all on the show, look, this is an area you want to look at. I think it's tough to say, hey, go buy it up here, because it's expensive. I think the gold and the silver stocks are still deeply undervalued. I think gold or silver can drop. And I think these guys are still going to come up with phenomenal earnings. Most of the companies aren't using $3,000 gold and $34 silver. Most of them are using something underneath that. And so I don't think we've seen the big move. It's a little surprising we haven't seen some type of correction, which just gives you an idea of the move. But I think that's the thing. And this is one of the things that we've been trying to explain to people. Is that, look, the S&P 500 has been a great return over the last number of years. It's come to an end once you had the valuations of 7 stocks, or I think 10 stocks made up 33% of the whole index. The tech stocks, well, I think it's the Magnificent Seven were 28% of it, and now they're all going down. The market's down 5%. If you know what you're doing, you should be up in this market, and I think that's going to continue. I think you're going to see a much more volatile market, going forward. I think that's going to present opportunities, and I think you want to take advantage of the volatility, the opportunities. One of the things that's surprising me is just that you're seeing a lot of stocks down very substantially, and that's creating opportunities if something comes up. I mean, we picked up one of it's actually Nestle's. Nestle's, I've watched it for years. It's up at 135. It starts plunging down, going down. They have problems. Chocolate's up. RFK is going after the food industry. We're kind of like, well, the Europeans, they've kind of cleaned. I mean, say what you want about the Europeans, but the one thing they've done a good job on that I think we should emulate is the food. I mean, anyone that goes to Europe comments on the quality of the food, and somehow they feel healthier. And they come back to the United States and get sick again. But so we figured, hey, the stock has come down. It's come down big. It yields 4%. Looks like an opportunity. Yeah, they have a few problems with Nestle's, but it's the top food company in the world. And you take advantage of that. Then it goes up, gets moved back up to 100. This is this year. And so the market since has plunged, and many stocks are down 20, 30%. And so by getting in the right stuff, by putting together a diversified portfolio, by understanding the bond markets, you can do pretty well and anchor out these positions and build a diversified portfolio. The positions in Europe, I mean, Nestle's was a European stock. Everybody flocked over to Europe and stock went up. So you've got to think holistically about your retirement, and because we've come to the end of the, I believe, and I've been saying this for since last year, and the market kept going up. But I really believe it's the end of the indexing out there. And the indexing, the S&P 500 has beaten the European market, the Japanese market, the Chinese market. I mean, you had, I think a while back we did something like, I think Amazon was at like 35 or 40 times earnings or more, and Alibaba was at 10 times earnings. You're like, well, yeah, it's Chinese, but Alibaba's 10 times earnings. Yeah, it reaches a point where it's like, well, do I have? What are the chances that Alibaba gets higher PE and maybe goes to 22 times earnings, even if everything sits there, versus maybe Amazon's comes down? And so I think and a lot of this PE issues were really the result of indexing and options on Wall Street, and I think that's coming to an end. Secretary Bessent and the Trump administration, they made it real clear they're not here for Wall Street. They're here for the American people. They made it real clear. I mean, Secretary Bessent said, look, Wall Street's made a lot of money over the last couple of years. That's not a ringing endorsement that, hey, we're here for Wall Street. That's like he understands it. He understands systems. He understands financial systems, and there's few people in the world that do that. I think we're pretty good at that. He understands, as we talked about earlier in the show, we have a problem with the financial system in the world today. We're borrowing too much money. This is going to be a choppy period. Secretary Bessent said it. I think it's very important. We said it on the show before, to understand what he said. The U.S. economy and the market have been intoxicated on all the government spending. Now they're having to go to a detox. The detox is never fun. I mean, I've not been to a detox, but every time I read about detoxes, I mean, it's not like, hey, I'm here, got a postcard from the detox facility. Things are great. No, it's bad. And so you have to listen to what they're saying. He's Treasury Secretary of the United States of America. He's in the middle of it. He's not sending you a postcard, from some Caribbean island sipping a pina colada. He's sending you something, it looks like, you're on maybe a Marine death march or something. It's just, it's going to be a tough thing. And so that's something. I think you want to be cautious in this world. I think with your retirement, if we can get through this rough patch, if we can get through this detox, that it's going to be at the first half of the year, there's a pretty bright future for the United States of America out there. We're building things back in the United States. Factories are coming back. He's gotten already $500 billion worth of factory approval. The number is actually a trillion, but I say $500 billion, which is what I think is reasonably going to get built. That's a real big positive. That's a lot of jobs. We're cutting government spending. That's going to help things out. But cutting government spending, dropping government spending, those tariffs, uncertainty, those cause slowdowns in the economy. And then when people see, whoa, the tariffs didn't cause the inflation to go through the roof. Oh, wow, look, these new factories are going up. I can get a job or I'm getting a raise. Oh, no, I don't have to pay income tax to make under 150. They get excited. They start spending money, and the economy starts going up. And the guy building the factory goes, oh, well, maybe we should do an expansion because I get 100% write-off the first year, so I don't have to pay any taxes, so the government gives me part of my money back. So these are exciting things, but it's going to take time. So you want to be cautious with your retirement. A couple things. As we said, that we send out the Max Out Savings report once a month on this, writing about all these issues, writing about our most recent one. We talked about how to, if you're behind in retirement by just working an extra 5 years or so, you can boost up your retirement 40%, 36-40%. We put a lot of interesting things in these reports. It's completely free. Just go to the website maxoutsavings.com. Sign up for the report. If you need some help with your retirement, if you're managing it, if you're concerned about these markets and they're very volatile, and you feel like your advisor doesn't understand what they're doing in this environment, give us a call at Max Out Savings Advisors. We manage retirement assets. We use Charles Schwab to hold the assets. We have a value investing approach that understands these markets. Just go to maxoutsavings.com and you can request a free appointment. And also remember our motto and philosophy, which is to save aggressively. To save aggressively and invest conservatively. That, my friends, is the key to building up wealth over the long term. Save aggressively, invest conservatively. If you need some help, go to our website. We'd like to help you out. Also, you can now get the show on podcast. So if you missed the show on the radio, make sure you check out the podcast. We'll see you next week right here on the Max Out Savings Show.
This has been the Max Out Savings Show with Ted Gioka, a presentation of Max Out Savings Advisors. Join us next Saturday at 10 a.m. for the Max Out Savings Show with Ted Gioka on AM 1070. The Answer.
This is Ted Gioka, host of the Max Out Savings Show, one of Houston's most popular financial radio shows, celebrating over a decade on the air in Houston, Texas. With stocks at record high valuations and interest rates near record lows, you need to have your guard up. You need to have a plan to manage risk to your retirement. Do you? At Max Out Savings Advisors, we have a risk-based value investing approach to your retirement. If you would like some help managing your retirement, go to maxoutsavings.com to set up an appointment. That's maxoutsavings.com.